Family Skeptical, Parenting Through Nonbelief.
We're a married atheist couple raising two wonderful, strange children. We ask big questions, dissect weird parenting moments, and examine how society ignores or misrepresents families like ours. If you're any stripe of nonbeliever who's involved in raising children, welcome. You are our people.
Our kids have heard all our swears, but yours might not have. So be thoughtful if there are young people listening with you. We're into summer.
Or summer is into us.
The kids have been home for a week.
They have been.
Yeah.
Well, Reader has been doing wonderful art lessons.
Yes.
Which has sadly precluded me being able to take the kids out to do other things, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about Reader because I just think kids are so interesting because Reader is an amazing person in so many different ways. I think I don't know how much we've talked about it. If I struggle with anything, it is figuring out the way to get Reader to be actively involved in all of the things that they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you feel this, but just in the last couple of weeks, I feel like, I don't know what happened, but I just feel like something sort of turned on for them.
Okay.
Because they just have been so much more active in their own interests.
Yes.
Over the past
true.
couple of weeks.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it really has. So,
they were out skateboarding before breakfast this morning because they wanted to try out their new board, which is fabulous, by the way.
Yeah, you guys did a really good job picking that out. But yeah.
Shout out to the skate shop. I wish we could name them.
Oh, I know. So, because it's they did some skateboarding during 6th grade. They've been interested in basketball for a long time, but that hasn't led to a lot of independent practice.
Mm-hmm.
But for the summer, we got them a skateboarding teacher. And they have been pretty great about going out and practicing on their own. They've done a little bit of basketball practice on their own. But the other thing is, I don't know how long they've been sort of tracking it, but they've been watching this artist on YouTube who does this amazing stuff with clay. And we did a little, it's like pop art. He does, he'll do one of the videos they showed me. It was a shark pirate. So this cool sculpture of a shark and pirate gear, other stuff. So we had done some clay stuff back when they were a lot younger.
Yes.
Where they had done we had done some cool stuff where we bought toys at thrift stores, and then I put clay on them to turn them into...
Oh, that whole thing. Yeah, you made a wonderful Wonder Woman.
Yeah, into other characters. So I think it was some Disney princess or villain, and I made her into Wonder Woman, and they really liked kind of directing that stuff. And they had made one amazing clay figure before we moved, which is, it's just so astoundingly cool. It blows my mind. But since then, we hadn't really done anything. And they were watching these videos and they were they wanted to try it out. And so Jaeger was doing something with a friend and we went, and my dad is an amazing sculptor. He hasn't done it in a long time, but I grew up with I don't know if he was using Sculpey or Fimo, but those oven baked clays all the time. We had that around the house all the time. And so I'm I know what to do here. We're going to get you, we're going to get you some Sculpey and see what happens. And we went to the art store, and it was such a great art store experience because there was a woman there who was an art student and just gave us such great advice about a lot of stuff. It was really wonderful. But, like we've gotten stuff before that has just never gotten used, right? So I definitely thought it was like a 50-50 chance whether anything happened with any of this stuff. And also, again, it's like so interesting seeing who your kids become, because I am so bad in clay. I did a ton of art earlier in my life, and I painted and drew and did all sorts of stuff, but like 3D was never my jam. Like I just could not make that work. But like I said, my dad was amazing. My mom did some sculpture. She's much better at that than I am. But but it's hard. Like it's really hard. And so Reader wanted to try a sculpture of one of our cats, and I gave them some advice, but they like came up with such a good plan for it. They like took all of these reference photographs and then did like reference drawings before they started sculpting, which I did not tell them to do. That was like totally them. And even so, I was just like, you've been watching the sculptor. They're really good. This is hard. Like, you'll probably have to do some to like get the feel for this, and just know you're going to keep improving and, But then like their first sculpture was amazing. And I would have been amazed whether it turned out kind of how they were picturing or not. Just that they took all this time to like put together a plan and try something new. But it was also cool to see them succeed at such a high level to make something that looked really amazing, and I think pretty close to what they hoped to accomplish. And since then, like when they do it, like they'll sit down for a couple of hours and just work through one of these projects. And I don't know, it's been really astounding. And just all them, as far as I can see. It's not like we've been doing anything.
Yeah, I want them to be able to do that with basketball, though I know it's harder with basketball because they want to have somebody to play with or against,
Yeah.
But I'm very happy that they're so motivated to get better at skateboarding. And like the Sculpey stuff was just unreal how cool it is. I can't wait to see them make the chair.
Yeah. Yeah, they're on their second cat and they want it to be sitting on a chair. So that's going to be weird. So in our family, we often say something is going to be a cool challenge. But where did that come from? The cool challenge?
That was just Reader. Reader would just be excited about having a challenge and would just describe it as a cool challenge. Just like a cool. And Reader would describe a truck as a cool truck.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was cool. A cool challenge.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't a challenge, it was a challenge.
Yeah. So Reader has taken on some cool challenges for the summer.
Yes.
All right. So I think this episode is going to come out around the 4th of July. Maybe not. It's probably going to be later. The schedule I try to keep us on is all sort of fakakta by the summer. But, within a couple weeks of the 4th of July. But I wanted to return to the topic of patriotism for a minute. I'm probably going to regret this. Because what I have to say is like really talking out of my ass. But I still feel like it needs to be said. And this all sort of came together to me right after we recorded. So it's been a while. So I think my thinking has also gotten a little fuzzier with time. But regardless of that, I was just thinking about the conversation we had because I feel like we missed the religious part of it. Because go back, I'll post a link in the show notes. We did like a whole episode about patriotism. And one of the things I ended up saying is that I really love kind of how absurd this country is. Like, I love that, like, people in LA want to, like, build houses that look like castles, even though that's, like, totally absurd on one level. And, like, I love that we put, like, giant donuts on donut shops. And, just that, like, there's just something, like, goofy and absurd about this country. And the hard thing is, I don't know where that comes from. Like, I truly don't know where that comes from in America. But I was thinking about it after we recorded. And I was like, and then I was also thinking because, one of my favorite directors in the world is David Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
And he was such an interesting guy. But I think he had a really interesting sense of America. Like, one of my least favorite movies of his is called The Straight Story. And it's this absurd story, which I think is based on a real guy who, like, in the Midwest took his tractor and decided to, like, drive his tractor across country to some place he needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually came out my freshman year at college. I had to have a really big, scary surgery that ended up being totally okay. But I did it over spring break, and I wasn't able to go home during spring break, and I had to stay and do this pretty scary thing for someone's first year at college. And it came out right at that time. So I remember going to see the movie in this little movie theater by my school, and I, like, wasn't getting home to Wisconsin. And it takes place, like, right in Wisconsin. And I think the guy even passes one of the, like, in the last show I mentioned that there are these, like, crazy untrained artists that I love. And I feel like he even drives past one of those in the movie. I could be making that up entirely. But I did sort of feel like, oh my God, my, like, favorite director made this incredibly kind of silly movie that, like, got me home at a time when I couldn't go home.
Mm.
And so much of David Lynch's work is, like, this sort of, like, weird love-hate with Americana. Kind of being fascinated by this, like, picture of America and what might be behind it.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite thing he ever did is Twin Peaks. And, that show is so fascinating because it's this, like, little small town and there's so much evil under it, but so many people in the town are so amazing. And then what made that show so interesting is it's like, it changed TV because it was, like, scary and a mystery, but it, like, also played off soap opera traits.
Yes.
This, like, very American, like, goofy, strange art form to the point where, like, in the show, there's a soap opera, this, like, absurd soap opera that everybody's watching. And then I was thinking about John Waters, who is a director who I don't connect with as much. I don't love his movies, but, like, every time I hear him talk, I think he's just the most amazing guy. And this other figure who, like, saw America in this amazing way where he's just, like, so deeply loves the outcasts of this country with this, like, incredible purity. And also, like, fairly recently decided to hitchhike across America.
That is so wild.
Which is this, like, wild decision for a guy his age. And, kind of going back to that time when he was making movies where, like, hitchhiking was so much more common, but also dangerous. And, and I was just like, after doing that record, I was like, I think my love of America is, like, really falls somewhere in the realm of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
This, like, oh, there is, like, it's not a perfect country and there's, like, a lot of ugliness underneath and a lot of times. But, like, there are these amazing people and there is something sort of fascinating and beautiful about these weird things we do. And so I was thinking about all of that. But then I was like, I think where America gets really fucked is that we have this amazing weirdness. But then we were also founded by the Puritans. And this is why I felt like we had to talk about it again, because I don't think you can get away from the religiosity of America.
Nope.
And I think perhaps the most damaging parts are like, I wonder if the tension in America isn't between our like natural absurdity and then this like Puritan founding that tells us that like all of that is wrong. And I wanted to know what you thought of that theory, which is a totally, like, that's crackpot. And I feel like there's a sociologist being like, there's been hundreds of years of scholarship on this, and there probably is. But like, I was just like, oh, there's something happening here.
Okay, let me first say that I am just a layperson. I know very little, maybe about too many things. But I remember in high school learning about the early American apocalyptic preachers. Mm-hmm. Like one stands out historically. His name was, I think, was Cotton Mather. Let me pull that up really quick. And it's like stunning. And this was back in the 90s, okay, like early 90s. So the only connection I had to that sort of preaching was the sort of weird stuff you'd see on the 700 Club or, you know, televangelists. Because the church I didn't go to wasn't that way.
Yeah.
Right? Hang on a second. Yeah, and Cotton Mather was born and died in Boston. He's born in 1663, died in 1728. So this guy is way back, but he's puritanical clergyman. Okay, he was a Puritan. Mm-hmm. He was referred to as the first American evangelical. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. And then, for instance, I'm going to read from the wiki, which of course has substantiation, but Cotton Mather's reputation in his own day, as well as in the historiography and popular culture of subsequent generations, has been adversely affected by his association with the events of the Salem witch trials. Although Mather had no official role in the legal proceedings, he wrote the book Wonders of the Invisible World, which appeared in 1693 with the endorsement of William Stoughton, the Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts and Chief Judge of the Salem witch trials. Mather's book constitutes the most detailed written defense of the conduct of those trials. So, defending the anti-woman hysteria, in other words. But the reason I bring him up is that as like an early Puritan, sort of like the sort of the bridge between the religiosity that brought the settlers here in the first place and the religiosity that went on to sort of inform part of American culture moving forward. That particular strain of Christianity that we now know as like modern evangelicalism. Like clearly he had a hand in it in separating from the Puritans, but still he was of the time. It's similar to how, you know, we look at the texts of the Bible and try to contextualize them by what the social norms were of the time, and that the religiosity that we see today is, I think, something that I don't think it's necessarily a new thing. I think that it kind of has been part of the American experiment, right? Like the idea of manifest destiny, the constant pushback against social reform, like everything having to do with anything other than men being in charge, right? That whole like that paternalism idea.
Yeah.
That like anything other than paternalism being this necessarily evil thing that needs to be feared and rooted out. Like I just look back and I don't see how they are fundamentally different from the folks of the past, because no matter how much scientific or social progress has happened, they're still using the same sorts of justifications. as the slave owners used, as the witch burners used. They're just doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
But so long as the justification persists, was it Steven Weinberg? I forget who said, that to make good men do evil takes religion.
Mm-hmm.
That you'll be able to have the best intentions, but if something bothers you and you have a religious justification for it, well, that religious justification is unassailable. They're going to be unfalsifiable. And so onto that religious justification, you can map pretty much any behavior. And so I think we, as a country, until the religiosity is finally diluted enough by progressive Christianity and non-believers, that we're going to see the same sorts of behaviors writ large, because, those sorts of politicians will perpetually be, in some capacity at least, voted into office by those parts of the country that still think the same way.
And the funny thing is that, like, American religiosity has all of the absurdity of America in it. Like, there's no way to look at a megachurch and not see that, like, wild you can, having, like, light shows at churches. That one guy who preaches, like, swinging around a Viking sword. I mean, we are not a serious, like, the biggest movements getting the most people today. Like, we are so not serious, and yet they take themselves so seriously. I mean, it's why I love Danny McBride's show about the megachurch so much. The Righteous Gemstones. I don't love everything he does, but that show's a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Skylar Gazondo all day long. Oh my gosh, he's so fun. It's like steals scenes.
Yeah.
From John Goodman and Danny McBride, he's stealing scenes, which is something.
Yeah, and the actress who plays his sister, I forget her name.
But yeah, she's magnificent. So freaking unhinged.
Yeah, but that show works because that world is so absurd to begin with. Like,
correct.
They are both heightening it, but also capturing something very real, I feel like. And so I think absurdity has, like, a beauty and lightness to it when it's enjoying its own absurdity. And then it gets, like...
Well, that's the problem with evangelicalism, is that it's not, like, it insists on being not self-aware.
I know. So that's the thing. So, like, the problem is we're still taking ourselves seriously on that level.
Fun fact about Cotton Mather, by the way. Fun fact. 2 fun facts. 1, he thought that New England was a New Jerusalem where the forces of good and evil were pitted against each other, playing out the apocalypse. He predicted that the second coming would occur in 1697. When that didn't happen, he moved it up to 1716. That didn't happen. He pushed it once more to 1736.
Yeah. We were just talking with Jaeger this morning about how that, like, the second coming is happening now part of Christianity is the part I have the least patience with. Because I'm just like, how many times do you have to get it wrong?
Yeah.
But since the original date of it supposed to happening, within the lifetime of his followers, once that passed, the fact that people have been predicting it at every single point in time since then and have never been right. I just don't. How do you not see it?
Well, it just comes down to Matthew 5:18 being, like, famously vague.
Yeah.
And that, like, certain Christians will insist that the second part is the only part you need to worry about, right? That he came to fulfill, meaning that they insist that it happened past tense. Whereas the first part of the sentence is, not until heaven and earth pass away. I think is it 17? Is it 19 that he says he'll fulfill? But like, he says, not until heaven and earth pass away should a single jot or tittle, like an iota, a dot or iota of the letter of the Mosaic law, like the law and the prophets, should be changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that it won't happen until heaven and earth pass away, because he has come not to abolish, but to fulfill. Right?
Yeah.
But the idea is they say, oh, so he fulfilled through his death, which isn't like, I mean, then you're starting to like read things into it. But like it just gives a lot of wiggle room. Whereas if you just look at the text as words mean words, then it's have heaven and earth passed away. No, then none of this other stuff happened. Because that was his prediction.
Yeah.
Until heaven and earth pass away, teach it, is what his command was. That I might have come to not abolish, but fulfill, but that fulfillment hasn't happened yet. And so it gives, like, but they insist that it has because of his death and resurrection, that was the fulfillment. And because that definitely happened, then Matthew 5:18 is definitely fulfilled because heaven and earth passed away metaphorically or whatever. And that's the thing, is that when you have a book where you can play fast and loose with what's literal and what's figurative to support your belief, it's basically just like rolling confirmation bias. You can come up with whatever like justification you want, like, you know, religion allowing for good people to do evil. You can find in the book the verse that supports your version of events or the action that you want to happen. It's just, yeah. We're going to be stuck with it until it gets diluted enough. And then when they are not so overwhelmingly voted into office by some segment of the population, then we will not deal with this anymore or as much.
Because it's just like, you look at somebody like Pete Hegseth, and like, there's no man, like, he should be running a circus. And like, yes, would there be terrible like HR violations at that circus? Probably. Would people sometimes not get paid? Probably. But like, but the shows might have like a scary, weird energy to them, right? Like, that's where that guy should be. And it's that we're like still taking ourselves seriously. That he would be put in government. Anyways. So, happy 4th. So in some weird, twisted logic, I feel like this kind of brings me to the last thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So I was listening to Alisa Childers, very Christian podcaster. Sometimes I find her shows interesting because her guests like sound very logical until there's like a turn halfway to 3/4 of the way through, and then like all the illogic comes out. But she recently had an episode that was just like bad from the start, which was about the evils of gentle parenting. And I'll put a link, but I will just sum it up. The evils of gentle parenting is that it looks as children as good. And we're all sinners. Ta-da! I mean, there was even a part at the end where they were sort of like breaking down some online videos about gentle parenting. And there was one where like a kid came down and there was a breakfast out that this mom had like always made, and the kid always liked it, and the kid didn't want it, which happens all the time. And the mom was like, you know what? I could get really upset, but like, I just didn't escalate the situation. I'm like, all right, I see you don't like this anymore. We'll figure something out. And the guests were like, she should have been thankful. You made her breakfast. You should have escalated to make sure she showed you that she was thankful. And I'm just like, guys, oh my. I mean, and I was thinking about it because like, I've been in a breakfast crisis because I will eat the same thing for like a year and then I'll just sort of get tired of it. And I'm sort of at a point where like, I don't really know what I want for breakfast anymore. Whatever, that's my issue. But like, I'm an adult. It is. I'm an adult. And so like, when I get sick of the thing I've had after a year, I can just make myself something different. But kids are in charge of no part of their life. So like, when they want something different, then they tell us. And like, yes, it's hard as a parent because like all of those things are extra work for us, but it like makes total sense. They're not being bad kids. Like, this is just stuff that happens.
Yeah.
So there was that show, which was just all bad. And then Dear Old Dads had an episode, and I don't even know which one it was, but they were talking about kids very much more sort of in that gentle parenting sense of where like kids are coming from a good place. But anyways, they were sort of talking more in that kind of gentle parenting framework of, you know, coming at kids as like they're not doing this because they are bad or trying to be mean to you, but just like dealing with their own stuff, and it's our job to help them figure it out. And it just made me think, because I didn't know like where you came down on if people are bad or good or something else.
Just like in general?
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this, actually.
Well, I want to return to it.
Okay. It's pretty simple. It's like, if humanity wasn't net collaborative and net empathetic, then we would not have survived, because we're a social species that has survived and thrived through cooperation. You know? So if the cooperation wasn't more often than not sort of situation, then like we wouldn't be here to talk about it right now. Along the way, we would have made catastrophically selfish decisions, or we would not have banded together when we should have, and bad things would have happened. Like you can only, like across that span of time, you can only make those sorts of catastrophic mistakes so many times, and so many opportunities would have invariably risen up or like been presented to us to make those decisions that we would have weeded ourselves out, is my because you're asking my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, I'm obviously like, I don't have a time machine. I'm just thinking about essentially just like a kind of a Bayesian inference, where I just look at what we know and what we can infer as far as like the numbers, and us surviving as a social species requires the social dynamics to be pro-social more often than not. If they were more antisocial, then we wouldn't be a successfully social species. We would be something else.
Yeah.
Now, I would say, the whole like fundy Christian thing about humans being fundamentally evil or wicked or needing the blood of the lamb, like that would be fine if we actually demonstrated ourselves to be like that antisocial more often than not. But we just aren't. Like, they're outliers. The reason why we make stories about them is because they're outliers. Because they're worth making stories about. Because they're not common. If they were common, then it wouldn't be an interesting story to tell, because we would just assume it, right, as being like the average of behavior. I don't know. Like, I don't think that we have a way of going back in time to discern it, but I believe that, we are on average good.
Logically, I hear what you're saying. I think it makes a lot of sense. And it ties in. I know at one point I was talking with my mom, and like, we were talking about, neighborhoods that are considered like more or less dangerous. And one thing that always stuck with me is she was like, wherever you are, if something happens to you, the vast majority of people in that neighborhood are going to be people who want to help. And that's in a neighborhood that's considered dangerous or a neighborhood that's considered safe. And that really stuck with me. And I think that's true. I also think, like, and I brought this up because I feel like my sense verges dangerously close to Christianity. because I am also amazed at, I don't look at people as bad or good, I don't think, but I am very often amazed at how quickly average people will be truly terrible, and also how quickly average people will be like truly amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the podcast For Crying Out Loud, Stephanie and Lynette, like one of the running jokes with like moms they've dealt with on PTAs and all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
Is like you give somebody a little bit of juice and then they just become a monster. Like, oh, you give them a little bit of juice. Like a mom will get a little bit of power on a PTA and suddenly it's, this like, and obviously those aren't people becoming like doing terrible things to people. And just like, I think it's hard to think about as a person in the world, but knowing the rates of child abuse, I've read a couple stories from foster youth. I'll link to his book. He talks a lot about the foster care system. I think he was abused in every single home he was in. And there wasn't a single home he was in where the foster children in that home were treated with the same amount of respect as the birth children of the family, if they had birth children. And just following like other foster youth, you hear these stories all the time. And that doesn't take away from people who do an amazing job at it, But like the commonality, I think it is amazing when we see ourselves as having more power or being superior to someone else, how quickly we can become something really unpleasant. But then on the other hand, I'm just like constantly hearing stories of people doing stuff where I'm like, really? Like we were just talking about Katie from Camp Quest, who like took in her kids' friends when their home situation became unstable, you know? And like, I've watched my mom this year just like put out these amazing amounts of effort to support people in her life, you know, which is like, doing things that wouldn't even occur to me to support people she cares about, And like, these things just happen every day. So I'm like, I think we have a baseline, which very much is kind of what you were talking about. But I am fascinated by how quickly somebody who I think we would view as like a very normal person can quickly skew one way or the other. Like the witch trials. You brought it up in the last segment. I've always been fascinated by that story because I think it's really interesting, like how fast that whole community could have been taken over by those happenings. Like, that's pretty interesting to me. And I'm like, I don't think it comes from any sort of religious place, right? So I'm not like, the good is because of God, the bad is because of the devil and our fallen nature. Like, I don't believe any of that in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's kind of funny that sometimes when I look at it, I might be closer to seeing the extremes that religious people do than somebody else. But I also on the other hand, I never look at kids and think like, oh, what they're doing is evil. You know what I mean? Like if you really watch children, this whole thing of like...
it depends on the kid.
Well, but I haven't. Like you can say that. But like, to me, it's so clear that what the vast majority of young people doing is just like working stuff out. It's not like, I'm going to torture my parents. It's like, I'm having a hard time. I'm not dealing with this situation.
Absolutely. But that's my point, is that the ones that are actually being evil and not just learning how to process, like they're outliers. And so we're asking, not are evil actions committed?
Yeah.
Your question was the quality of the people. Are people more often than not evil? Meaning, do people on average perform more evil actions than good actions? Like, and then what percentage of the population are those people? Those people are a vanishingly small percentage of the population, I think. That it is far more likely that for whatever reason, people will perform an average, like an average neutral, where they'll do as many good as bad. And then you'll have more than the actual evil people be good people that are, in that regard, they are pro-social and encourage, that sort of camaraderie and development, such that we can then progress as a species. Like the progress can't happen when like self-destructive or group destructive tendencies are allowed to take hold, right? Mm-hmm. We look at those the versions of those behaviors writ large in the 20th century, and they either did away with themselves or were done away with by pro-social behavior, like Allies versus the Axis. So I would say people doing bad things, I'm not saying people like won't do bad things. It's what is the average that a person does? And then within that population, what is the average good versus bad behaviors for the population as a whole? And so regardless of the number of people doing a greater, like a 51% or more bad behaviors, there seems to always be a greater number of people doing net neutral or 51% or more good.
Yeah. But I'm pretty fascinated by how far the swings can be on either side.
Sure.
Within the same person as well.
Well, also within context. That part of psychology is so interesting from like a storytelling standpoint. Like, at what point will people who otherwise do overwhelmingly good things, at what point will they do an evil action? Like you could talk as simply as the, Ray Comfort, the banana fits in your hand, so it's engineered. Anyway, Ray Comfort, who his famous street epistemology bullshit line is, are you a good person? Have you ever told a lie? Then you're a bad person. Then you're evil. Then you need Jesus, basically, is what his nonsense boils down to. But why is telling a lie to the Nazis about the Jews you're hiding in your basement, why is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure the Jewish folk wouldn't think that that lie was done in error. And I'm sure that God wouldn't think that his chosen people being protected from, fascist jackboots, that action would be necessarily like not praiseworthy. I don't know, like it all feels very contextual. And so I'm always more concerned with the context, right? Than this sort of like absolutist version of events.
But I have no answers.
You have answers. You have good answers, but it's a complex series of questions.
After thinking about it, like what I truly don't know is I'm like, when does it start? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it seems so rare in children. But I also, I don't believe it's all nurture. The other thing I've learned raising children is we do a lot, but they come out who they are.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it on some level. There are tons of ways to support or not support parts of who they are, but you get a person and they kind of come with certain stuff attached.
Do the Christian fundamentalist podcasts that you listen to ever talk about the age of accountability?
I can't say I remember one.
Are you familiar with what that is as a concept?
No.
So with the, some Christian sects, they have this idea of the age of accountability. Before which a child's actions wouldn't be deemed, good or evil, but after which they would be.
Yeah.
Right? Like that transition from juvenile prosecution to adult prosecution.
Yeah.
I just was curious because this is, it's sort of like germane to the conversation that they already have this version of it. Like before the age of accountability, then they're not going to be judged as harshly and they'll be getting into heaven regardless because they're whatever. But like, we just know that that's not necessarily like the case. If a kid already has some sort of like neurochemical imbalance that leads them to antisocial behavior, then no, there is no age out of that.
Well, but also I do think, like even talking about what we were talking about with Reader, like I think we know that brains aren't fully formed until like, isn't it even up to like 25? And
yeah.
And I think
for boys at least, I think 25 is when the prefrontal cortex is finally.
And I don't know.
I'm going to check on that really quick.
Watching the kids grow up, like I think you sort of see like parts of themselves come online in a way. It's really distinct.
Yeah, mid-20s, around 25.
So I do think it makes sense to have different expectations at different ages. Because stuff just like it's not integrated. It's not all working until a certain point.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's also probably worth bringing up that we as parents have a huge obligation to be really humble about what effect our actions have on our kids. Like, not just like the opportunities we present to them for growth and like increasing self-knowledge, but also the examples we set when they just observe us doing things, because that reinforces, the worldview that's already coalescing inside their heads.
Yeah.
Which starts before they have a fully formed prefrontal cortex. Like how many people are working through childhood trauma, as it were.
Yeah.
But I think what's more important as parents is that we speak about that humility and then do our best to exemplify that by saying we don't know things when we don't know them and by asking for help when we need it. Not assuming that our kids need to see us as these like bulwarks or that we're constantly like the strongest person in the room. Great leadership is exemplified in part by your ability to say, you don't know, and then deferring to somebody who does, so you then can help formulate the best path forward with increasingly accurate, effective understanding, right?
Yeah.
The expectation never should be perfection from a parent, from child to parent. Just like we shouldn't expect our kids to always have the perfect responses, we should never hold ourselves to that standard.
And not to take it to a dark point, but like, we know that young people are capable of like really negative actions.
Of course.
And I think we've seen, there was a sort of sense of like, oh, there was no way to know. But I think the more we've looked, often there these like incredible red flags. And to have that humility to admit when your child is truly struggling. And if you don't have the skills to deal with it, to reach out and get help. Yeah.
So what do you think we should do when our country is struggling? Do we also then need to have the humility to say that, we have fucked up now and in the past, and maybe we need to be honest with what we've done as a people? Yeah. It's almost like not talking about these things with our kids just perpetuates bad behaviors as a country. It's almost like the things that we do on a small scale are done on a large scale because it's a cultural thing, which ties it up right back to the beginning of the conversation.
How the death of Laura Palmer exposes all of the bad things happening
underbelly.
In Twin Peaks.
Yeah, and ducks.
They're all along, but just suddenly it's all brought to the surface.
Yeah, the owls are not what they seem.
No. Well, there we go. As always, we have to thank Jonathan Zalbin and First Frame Music for the music for this podcast.
And here ends this episode of The Family Skeptical, where nothing is sacred except for our kids. But there's a wild delay today. You finished? You started when I had already finished.
No.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
There was no overlap in our phrases.
We are not simpatico. We are truly insimpatico.
We are. Just Riverside is internally not simpatico.
Yeah.